high relative humidity,
Yep.
and that they have nutritional adaptation. Not all cattle have it. That they have been selected correctly. That means that they have good hormone balance and that they have high relative intake. Why is this so important? Well, the good hormone balance means that they will cycle in time, they will be precocious, and they will calve every year. And in the bull side, it means that he will be high testosterone. He will be able to breed a lot of females in a multi-sire scenario. Because in nature, that's what they did. Just think about it. There wasn't one bull per 25 cows. In nature, it was one bull per cow. So they had to fight amongst them. And the best one, which will be the one with the uh, lowest gravity center and most powerful to push, because bulls in cattle, they fight by pushing, not like rams by hitting. So they have to have a good traction, strong thighs, uh, strong shoulders, short neck, very massive shoulders, and those are the ones that will get the breeding done in nature. So we have to emulate nature and select according to what nature will have selected for. If not, we will end up with artificial cattle that will have a hard time doing a regenerative, non-selective grazing that we need to improve the land while making a profit.
Gotcha. It's a very interesting thing, and I think it goes across all species of livestock. It's not just isolated to cattle, is it?
Correct. Even pigs,
Yeah.
even ducks and geese.
Yeah.
Everything has to be selected according to nature. If we go against nature, we're going to end up with artificial, industrial type livestock.
Yeah. And I've been talking about this with chickens as well, that, one of the things in chickens is that we have very artificial breeding now, and you've got females which are designed to look like males, and and so that has an impact on, and broodiness in chickens is starting to be bred out, and all of those sorts of factors. Broodiness is a mothering instinct. Do you think that we're getting similar sort of work being done in cattle?
It's starting to rain, so I'm going to get into
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the principles are the same. We need to select according to nature.
Yeah.
If we don't want artificial animals, we're going to get an artificial environment to have, so we can have them breed and produce. It's like if you want to pamper the animal, or if you want them to behave as they would do in nature. You have to decide what do you want.
Yeah.
And to regenerate the land, we cannot pamper the animals and make profit. It's impossible.
Yeah. So having really low input systems, one of the keys in that is having a landscape that fits the animal and an animal that fits the landscape.
Exactly. We're talking about generating the land with animals.
Yeah.
Another aspect is the breeding, calving and breeding season. How do they act in nature? When do they calve?
Yeah.
If you go to Serengeti, they calve at the start of the rainy season, not at the height of the drought.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen most cattlemen here, they calve in December and January when everything is frozen.
And the nutritional plane is going down.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what does that mean if we think of forage production as a continuum?
Mm-hmm.
That means that we are having the stocking rate will be around half of what it could possibly be, just because of that very important aspect of having them calving in the winter.
Yeah.
You see a just fresh cow or ewe or goat will double her requirements per day. So if you have them freshening when everything is brown because of the winter or dry season, That means that the colostrum will be lower in nutritional factors like vitamins and hormones. So the offspring will get a not so good nutrition or immune system, and that will follow it through its life.
Yeah.
And then on the economic aspect, they will be having their babies when there is less nutrition. So you cannot have the same amount of cattle just because of that factor.
Yeah.
We have a lot of production in the rainy season, the growing season, and we have no production in the dry or cold winter season. So we better mesh those two curves of production and requirements together to make it more efficient and natural.
Yeah. And that's something anybody can do. It's
very easy. Just by
yeah.
taking the males out and putting them in when you want them at the time conducted to the best calving or kidding season.
Yeah. So also want to talk to you about non-selective grazing. This is a really big, you've got a few pet topics, I suppose, and non-selective grazing is one of them. Can you speak to the importance of that, and what's the difference between selective grazing and non-selective grazing for people who don't know about that?
Okay. You see, we're going to start talking about plant physiology.
Mm-hmm.
The grasses and the legumes, they require to have their growing points exposed to sunlight periodically so they don't die, the growing points. You got that?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay, it's very important. So when we do grade selectively, we are taking off the energy producing leaves and leaving the energy consuming stems. That's one point.
Yeah.
That means that the crown of that plant will have less stored energy to cope with that drought or winter. That's one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
The other one will be that by shading out, by grazing tall all the time, by shading out the growing points, they start to die because of lack of sunlight. And eventually we end up with a higher or less density of growing points or plants per square meter.
Yep.
And that can easily be measured and monitored.
Yep.
We want more growing points per square meter or yard and not less. And we want healthier and stronger and fatter roots. We achieve that by periodically taking it all down with livestock. Not all environments have a huge pack of snow to trample everything down.
Yeah.
And not all plants are so low in lignin that they can be trampled down. All the tropical grasses, Bermuda, Pangola, Bahia grass, they spring back up after being trampled. Even if you go with your tractor on top of it,
Yeah.
they spring back up. They don't die.
No.
And when you produce a lot of forage, you want it to be recycled by the ruminant into manure, which inoculates the soil with all the necessary microorganisms to regenerate it. So the more of it you recycle through the ruminant, through that fabulous batch that is the rumen, the faster you regenerate that soil.
Yeah.
It's not true that by letting more trampled material, it improves the fastest. It improves the fastest the humus content by the amount of sugars produced as root exudates by the green leaf. So we want a lot of green leaf and less stem. That's the leaf to stem ratio.
Yeah.
Easy to measure also.
And very easy to visualize.
Well, you cut the square yard or square meter and you separate the green leaf from the dead material, be it stems or brown leaf, and you weight it.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be amazed at the results. You will see that the grazing management previous to this is very important to determine the leaf to stem ratio. And what produces photosynthesis, the leaf or the stem?
Yeah. So
Okay.
with that, Jimmy, have you got an ideal ratio that you've come up with?
It depends on the species.
Yeah,
For
right.
example, the ryegrass is easy. Bermuda grass is more difficult.
Yeah, of course.
Clover are easy. Yeah, do you
Yeah.
follow?
Yep.
Now, another question. What produces daily gain on animals, the leaf or the stem?
Yeah.
Meat, milk. We want more leaf to produce more root exudates. A hectare of good grazing managed correctly can inject into the soil in the rhizosphere up to 10 tons of sugar exudates per year. That's equal to 1 ton of dried sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And this sugar, very high in energy, it feeds the microorganisms that will in turn feed the plant and in turn be digested by other microorganisms with the final digestions after many digestions made by fungi, and the end result is humus, the stable organic matter that will last hundreds of years.
Yeah. It's the name of the
That's
game.
important.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's something that the property that you're on now in Katy in Texas, which you've been working on for a couple of years now, 2 years or 3 years?
In the end of May, it will be 2 years.
Yeah, right. So I think the last time we saw each other in person was in Texas when I was at Douglas and you came up to the Rex course.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
I think it was, yeah, you'd only been there for a few months, but you're very
Mm-hmm.
excited about the project. So um, apart from which, it got you closer to your family than the Florida project, which a lot of people will have seen, and especially if you go on to Living Web Farms and their YouTube channel, there's a lot of your work there at the project in Florida, which is where we also met a few years ago. And
Yes. I'm still consulting for them.
yeah, yeah. And that's quite an outstanding project on a whole lot of levels. I talk about it quite a lot because I think, well, you think of the background to that project in Florida. It started off as a tree, well, it was a tree farm for many years, and had weed mat on it. It was herbicided a lot, and it was on sand. So when you took all of that away, you started off with a sandbox and Bermuda grass. It's not generally the way to start a viable operation, but can you speak to the steps that you went through with that project with your friends there?
Yes, I started there in April 2012 and with cattle. And before that, I was consulting for them.
Yeah.
And they had a huge problem of a toxic weed growing there and very little bahia grass and a lot of bare sand.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to regenerate that property without heavy inputs. So I suggested to buy the Mashona cattle, which the herd or the largest herd that lives in the United States was for sale in New Mexico.
Yep.
So we started grazing that. Greg Judy was the one that introduced me there, and he agreed on the Mashona cattle. So when I got there with the cattle in the trailers, we started grazing what we could, building fences in front of the cattle.
Yeah.
Possible, but there was very little grass. So we had to adapt those animals for a west to east move, which is difficult. But the first year we went from a 90-day breeding season to a 60-day breeding season. And they came with 65% of them pregnant. And we went up to 93% that first year.
Wow.
We used free choice cafeteria style minerals,
Yeah.
and they are very nutritional adapted animals.
Yeah.
Mashona, they are doing the genotyping right now for them
Yeah.
here in the US, and they have found that they are something special. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So with their genotype, can you just speak to that for a moment?
Well, let me go back to that farm in Florida. Then we started planting not cover crops, but no-till drill legumes in the winter and in the summer, and then we had to spray liquid fish with compost extract so the seedlings will not die because
hmm
the soil was so poor. To the point that 3 years later, the white sand was brown,
Yeah,
dark brown, and now it's growing a huge amount of forage, 5 times more than the neighbors.
yeah,
And we started below zero.
yeah. I can remember coming there. I think you'd probably been there about 6 months or so, and you invited me to come and help with the plan, and which
Yes.
I didn't really help. I think you helped me more than I helped you. Um,
No, no, you're there in the office. We just have to do it.
but
On the trees and everything hasn't been done.
well, it was what was great was for me was seeing the soil aggregating. Soil that had been abused and was literally just a big sandbox, 1,200 acres of sand, and that when we dug into the soil, even after a very short period, the power of exudates and the mycorrhizal fungi to start to aggregate the soil particles together and start that process of regeneration. It was very exciting. And
Yeah,
then to
pictures of
see videos of it later where you've got crops which are taller than you. You're a big man, 6'6", and to have crops that were standing over you really shows the power in all of this, doesn't it?
yes, that was the glomuli, no? That was the
Yeah,
huge.
yeah, 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 which is from the mycorrhizal fungi. So how's that project going now, Jimmy, in
Well,
Florida?
we have 550 acres of pasture.
Yep.
We have like 550 animals there.
Wow. Just all on grass, no substitutes,
Well,
no
we
supplementary.
no, in the winter when everything is frosted and the protein content is 3 or 4%,
Yep,
we need to feed either what you call lucerne
yep,
hay
yep,
or flaxseed meal,
yep,
so they can digest the high fiber lignin of the stockpile bahia grass.
yep. So you do a bit of supplementary feeding there.
Yeah, only when it's frosted. Once
Yeah,
it starts to grow back again, we don't feed anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. So when it comes to the ranch as an organism, that philosophy goes back, if you like, to some of what Rudolf Steiner talked about in his book Agriculture in 1924, 1925. Is that part of your philosophy when you think of a ranch of an organism, or do you have another philosophy that goes with that?
No, the farm or ranch is one organism. Did you see the movie Avatar?
Yeah.
Okay, they talk about exactly mycorrhiza
hmm
because all the trees communicate and all the living beings communicate through the roots of the trees.
hmm
Okay, and I have seen it, how the mycorrhiza starts to spread and eventually cover the whole farm or ranch, even going through gravel roads. I don't know how that works, but I see it because I start to see this deep green, lush grass where the cattle urinate and dung. And then when you apply fish or when you start to have legumes that feed the mycorrhiza, it starts to spread and eventually covers the whole farm. And it stops with the neighbor because they spray or do continuous grazing or use ivermectin
hmm
or fungicide, herbicide, insecticide.
Yeah.
When you don't use any of those and you treat the land correctly, and you can grow some legumes, which are essential, then you have your living organism ready to take off.
hmm Cool. And
You,
does that extend to the humans a bit as well? Do you think that people need to be very much involved?
yes, yes. You want a winning team, not a whining team.
I like
So
the sound.
everyone,
That could be a bumper sticker, Jimmy. I think.
everybody
Or a
wants
t-shirt.
part of a winning team.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you want to be world-class farm or ranch, you're going to have a lot of people wanting to join you.
yeah,
If you're really into being the best in what you do,
yeah,
you just have to search out the ones that are the best in what you're interested in and try to learn from them.
yeah.
I think that's the best way.
Mm, mm.
So
And
if the people that work with you are in tune to this and you motivate them and you set the example, it's easy to build up people in the land that are in tune with the land.
yeah, and that's something you consult with people about too. I mean, that's, you know, your role is a unique one in that you're a ranch manager, but then you also work as a consultant with people to help them with all of this stuff. And yeah, so describe to me the usual process that you have when working with a new client.
Okay, first I do just an assessment. I want
Hmm.
to see, have you heard, I'm sure you do it, in England they call it if the land has a good heart or not.
Uh-huh.
Right, that to me that means it's high in humus or not. Yeah, because if it's not high in humus, whatever you plant will die as a seedling, and you will blame it on the seed, on the weather, on everything but on the humus content.
You'll start whining.
Yeah, instead of winning. So, so you do this first, and then you do transects depending on the property. Some of them are in the desert,
Hmm.
some of them are in the mountains, some of them are in the tropical part. So you expect different ground cover and different plant species. But you do. Have you heard about the
Sorry,
plant?
the
Yeah, you're still there. Okay.
yeah,
You do transects to see how is your ground cover, but not ground cover of litter as everyone does.
hmm,
I need ground cover of growing points
hmm,
because the growing points and the strong roots is what holds the land, the soil, from erosion, either wind or rain. Have you seen those pictures, or have you been to the desert and all the litter you left is blown into the fences?
yeah, of course.
Or there is a strong rain in the tropics, we can get at 21 inches in 12 hours.
Yep.
And if you don't have strong roots, that litter will not help. Now, more of this crazy weather will be around as time passes, and we better prepare for it with
Yeah,
strong roots, strong soil aggregates,
yeah.
and so plant diversity.
So having more plants is something that you're always pushing towards. Having more growing points. Litter is obviously important because it's part of the armor of the soil and it's part of what mulches the soil and also feeds some of the nutrient cycling that happens. But it's more important, like for you, it's a really big focus to have lots and lots of growing points because one goes with the other, doesn't it?
Yeah, to me, litter is a byproduct of high forage production and non-selective grazing.
Yeah,
You will have a lot of litter if you do it right.
yeah,
But if you concentrate on litter and want to have more litter, you end up with bigger plant spacings,
yeah,
more bare ground.
yeah,
That's doesn't to regenerate. You need less bare ground and more growing points covering everything.
yeah, yeah. So, other notes that I've got here, you do a bit of work with shrubs as well. You incorporate, and especially in your work in Mexico at your home ranches, you've incorporated leguminous shrubs into alleys on
Oh
your
yes,
farms there, and also grown those same shrubs as a forage in the area in between the alleys. Um,
yeah.
what was the origin of that thinking for you?
Well, since 1982, I've been studying the leucaena, which
Hmm.
is native to Mexico. From the books from Australia, from the Syro,
Yep.
I
Yep.
wrote all about it, and I started planting it in 1984
Hmm.
and doing trials. But I didn't learn how to manage it correctly until 1991.
Yeah. And so this was all to break some of the feed gaps that you had and the protein deficiencies that you were having at different times of year?
It was more to have a legume that
Yeah.
was truly perennial in the tropics,
Yeah.
because most legumes, they cannot coexist well with tropical grasses at sea level because they grow so fast.
Yeah. 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 So,
So
so with the
leuca-
lay, so with the layouts, what was your thinking with the layout of the Leucaena, and do you use Albizia as well? I think.
no, I didn't use Albizia. I talked to a researcher from South Africa who researched Albizia in Atlanta, Georgia, and it worked the same as
Yeah.
Leucaena.
Yeah.
Leucaena can fix up to 400 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. If you think about it, 78% of the air we breathe is nitrogen.
Yeah.
So why buy artificial nitrogen?
Yeah.
If we have it right there. We just have to make it available in a nitrate form for the plant.
Yeah, and it's so costly to make through the Haber-Bosch process. It uses an extraordinary amount of liquid petroleum gas as well. So it's a crazy solution.
And it kills the soil
Yeah,
microorganisms.
that's fantastic at killing organisms. So in
And
terms of the layouts,
yeah.
how did you come up with the layouts that you?
Okay, I did it east to west.
Yep.
Because, as the sun travels through the winter and summer, it goes from straight up to the side, and we get a better shade distribution for the cattle because that ranch is in a very high heat index environment.
Mm-hmm.
And we have too much sunlight.
Yes.
So Leucaena intercepting 30% of the sunlight, we still have more than enough for the grass growing beneath it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So by lowering the temperature at the soil surface, we can have a more efficient nitrogen cycle. So that means we have more forage produced instead of less by adding Leucaena and at a high quality. But after years of using it there, I noticed that the Bermuda grass grew faster and faster, and the Leucaena needed more time. So we were always with a very mature Bermuda grass, and the Leucaena was at its best stage.
Mm-hmm.
So now I only have the alleys, the trees, protect for shade, and I'm planting fruit trees there. And I took the rows of Leucaena in between those alleys, which are 42 meters wide.
Okay, so they're quite wide.
Yeah.
And it must have an outstanding effect on the landscape, on the look of the landscape.
Oh, it does. It looks just beautiful. We have big trees now and a lot of birds.
Yep.
And when it gets very hot, you can go in the shade.
Yeah.
People and everyone can go to the shade.
All animals.
And we have adapted cattle for that very hot environment.
Yeah. So the importance of the heat index, is that something that particularly relates to the breed selection that you have and the adaptive genetics that you're taking those breeds down? Is that the biggest importance for you? But also how you adapt the landscape design, which is something I'm particularly interested in, obviously, is going east-west as opposed to north-south with trees and all of that sort of thing, and the amount of shade that you provide.
Yes, it does. Because there is a gene called the slick gene. Short, slick hair is produced by that gene. But it also has another very important. Hello.
Good. Hi, Jaime. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
I see you very well.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. Good morning.
Yeah, another very important aspect of that, it has an influence on the FSH, follicle stimulant hormone, which means that the cattle that have that gene, which is dominant, will be able to cycle and get pregnant even when they are low in body condition. That's a very important aspect for reproduction in the hot tropics and anywhere. Yeah. So we are researching into that, and I am using animals that are homozygous to that gene. So when you cross them with a longer hair animal, they will come out presenting the short, sleek hair gene. That means better reproduction.
And when it comes to protein supplementation, I touched on this a bit before, and you said at your project in Florida, that's something that you're having to do. Can you speak a bit about that, and also how you can move away from that supplementation over time? Obviously, you've only got so much you can do on the adaptability front of the animal, because protein is protein is protein. But
Well,
from a landscape perspective, managing the forages that you have available and so on, how far can you go with that, particularly in very seasonal rainfall environments like you often find in grazing areas?
Yeah, but high heat index or low heat index?
Yeah, that's the variation. If we're looking at high heat index, how do we manage it there?
Okay, if it's a high heat index, you see the digestion of high fiber forages in the rumen produces a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hot outside, and the grass is dry and it's tropical, very high in fiber. The animal compensates by reducing its intake. That means they're going to lose body weight.
Yeah.
Even if you feed the protein. So when you have an adapted animal like the Mashona or the tropical milking criollo or Romosinuano, any of those that have the gene, and that they can consume a lot of high fiber because they can take the heat produced by the digestion of that fiber and the heat from the outside, then you have a better body condition animal. Okay?
Yeah.
People think that a Brahman or a Cebu can take a lot of heat. And it's true, they can take a lot of dry heat, but not high relative humidity, because they were not developed in a very humid area, but they were developed in very hot and dry areas. So when you move north in Australia or north in Brazil, or you go to Colombia to the Atlantic side, I was there in December, you will see the Brahman cannot take that high heat index.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot take the high humidity. They breed better in the dry season than in the rainy season. And the grass produces more when it's raining than when it's not.
Yeah.
So they are not well adapted to that environment.
Yeah.
They're post-Taurus animals that don't have those problems with fertility that the Brahman has. It's just that people don't know about it, but they are there.
Yeah.
They're the Mashona, Romosinuano, Senepal, tropical milking criollo, Braun, many.
Yeah, it's interesting the pathway that people have gone with breeds, isn't it? It's become very homogeneous. If you're in the temperate areas, then it's all Angus, and if you're in the tropical areas, then it's especially the dry tropics, then it's all Brahman, and pretty well everything else is forgotten almost. I'm generalizing, of course, but a lot. It definitely seems that we've gone with a very big narrowing of genetic diversity and breed diversity.
Even in Mexico and Colombia, they have the criollo cattle there that they have the short, sleek hair gene, but they prefer the Brahman, even though they have not as high as production per hectare.
Mm-hmm.
But know about it. They haven't. A lot of people know, but not many.
Yeah.
We need to teach them.
Yeah, well, and as you well know, a paradigm is a very hard thing to change.
Oh, yeah.
So, when it comes to stocking rates, you work and have worked for some time with Johann Seitzman, who is accredited with establishing the ultra high stock density. Can you speak about your work with Johan and what that's taught you, and about stocking and having high stocking rates, how that works for you and your clients?
Yeah, as the stocking rate determines the profitability of a ranch or farm, the fertility of the individual cow determines her profitability. So we want to have a high stocking rate as possible while having a good body condition conducive to a high fertility. So my experience has been going up in stocking rate from 3 to 5 times. That's 300 to 500%, while maintaining a good individual animal performance. To do this, you have two choices. Either you use unadapted animals and feed a lot of supplement and use crutches, or you use adapted animals and use less supplement and no crutches. Crutches will be shade structures, warmers, energy supplements, continuous grazing, selective grazing. Selective grazing is a crutch. If you go to Africa and watch the Cape buffalo, they do non-selective grazing. They move only when they have found the area or the lion is close by. They don't want to move because when they move, they are vulnerable.
So you work with Johan Seitzman, who wrote one of my favourite books, in fact, Man, Cattle and Veld. I think it's a really important book. What's the influence been on you of Johan's work and your relationship?
Oh, big. As I said, when you're interested in becoming good at something, in a world-class way, you seek out the best in what you're interested in. So I had been taught nutrition by Mark Bader in the US by Free Choice Enterprises. I had the prize for Mexico for 15 years. He would come to my house and be there every 3 months for a week, and we will travel around the country. So I learned a lot from him in nutrition, ruminant nutrition. And then I had mentors in grazing, but who really put all that together, the grazing and the animal genetics necessary to achieve a non-selective grazing was Johan. I contacted him by email, and he came to my house in Mexico from Zimbabwe in 2008. No, well, I don't recall. Yeah, 2008, and he gave a course there, and he taught me a lot. And then when I moved to the United States, I invited him to come and to start teaching courses, which I put up together for both of us. He will teach the animal genetics, the cattle genetics, adapted genetics, and the breeding season. And I will teach the part about non-selective grazing with an area set aside for drought or dry season or winter, and the mineral and minimum protein and mineral supplementation program, because I had experience in grazing and in animal nutrition. So we had a team, and we did classes for 3 years. And now he moved to Zambia, or he's moving to Zambia, and we don't teach together anymore.
It's had a really big impact on not just you, but the people that you've worked with.
Yes, he's someone very special that was able to comprehend the whole package, more holistic than the holistic people, really. Yeah, because they don't take into account protein supplementation, or they didn't. Maybe now they do, but they didn't take into account non-selective grazing and the animal required to do that job. And Johan did. So to me, that's very important.
Yeah, well, it's all a growing space and everyone's learning all of the time. So it's important to hear all of the voices, isn't it? And not get into your silo.
Yeah, well, we never stop learning. We have to be open and know that, one of the maxims of holism is plan, monitor, and replant.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's from the
Yep.
charm.
Yep.
When we stop monitoring, we stop replanning, and we end up in a rut.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big mistake. We need to be monitoring and be open to visit other places and other people that may be doing things in a better way.
Yeah. So, is it still raining where you are there, Jimmy?
No, it stopped. You want me to get outside?
Yeah, let's have a look at what you've got going on there, because you were showing me when we started before we went on.
Okay, this is the ball clover here.
So this is a
And
clover.
then we see the common veg coming up. And this is the pasture on a bottomland farm. The calves move out, the heifers, but they were here a while ago.
Yep.
And all this was, they used herbicide before. Now we did with a mower to control the weeds.
Yep.
And no wormers. And no insecticide, nothing. So now we have all these volunteer legumes coming up. And that means that the nitrogen that was being not fixed as humus, or, well, humus releases 25 kilograms of nitrogen per percent per hectare per year, or 50, and they hold 125,000 liters of water per hectare per year, each percent. So I want to build that up. So now we're building it up.
So tell us about this property here at Katy. What's its size and what are you running? And
okay, I manage 5 properties.
Mm-hmm.
The main one is 730 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I have there about 400 animals. This one here is 1,000 acres, but grass or open area. You see the woods over there?
Yep.
Okay, open area is more like 300 acres.
Right.
In another farm of 1,000 acres. These are acres, not hectares, okay?
Yeah, sure.
2.5 acres per hectare, or less. That's a very poor land. It has acidic soils and only bahia grass. I don't have cattle there right now because in the winter nothing grows there. And then another property that's like 8 acres. And then another one that is 320 acres. And each one is like half an hour to an hour and a half away from the other. So I do the ultra high density grazing only in one property and a lax rotation on the rest.
So you're actually...
It's only me, a helper.
Yep.
800 animals, 3,000 acres in 5 properties.
And you're moving all of those animals to those different places?
Not all the time. As I said, it's only a lax rotation.
Yeah. Okay. And what sort of setup have you put in there to get the place going? Have you done much fencing or water work?
Yeah, only fencing. The water was already in place.
Yep.
And I've done the 1-wire fencing with fiberglass posts.
Yep.
Greg Judy does.
Yep.
The only difference is that instead of gates, we just prop up the fence with a PVC pipe.
Yep.
So the cattle will go under. That's much easier than building gates. The Argentine gate and what else? No, the Uruguay gate. Whatever.
It's important to them.
You see, four parts of the program: adaptive genetics, the correct calving season, correct grazing management with stockpile for the winter or dry season,
Mm-hmm.
and minimum protein and mineral supplementation. So I'm doing all of that by taking most of all the cattle into the property that is grazed intensively and breeding them so every cow calves in the spring when there is green grass growing.
Mm-hmm.
And then feeding them protein at the minimum protein supplementation so they can get by on the stockpile Bermuda grass that has been snowed, frosted, and rained on to last till the spring. So because there is only two of us doing all of this with 800 animals, that's how I do it. And
Right.
it's working well.
So you've got some programs coming up. In the past, you've done a few programs with, I mentioned before, you've done them with Johan Seitzman, and those programs are online on living web farms, which I've directed a number of clients to, and they found those extremely useful. In fact, those programs have been something that's turned them all around in terms of turned their operations around and turned a lot of their attitudes around to the way that they do things. Tell us about the new program that you've got coming up, which I've got here on my tablet here, is coming up on March the 2nd and 3rd in Arkansas.
In Batesville, Arkansas?
Pardon me?
In Arkansas?
Yeah, in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's close to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yep.
Yeah, now I try to give the class more digested, so to speak.
Yep.
My wife, as wives usually do, suggested a better way for me to do it. She said that you have to give your class in a not so technical way and give it in a easy to understand way, because we took a class with Christine Jones from Australia.
Yep.
She explained everything so easy, like for primary level.
Yep.
And I got away disgusted. I said, I didn't learn much. But she said, hey, but look, the way she did it, everybody understood. And now they can ask questions. And I thought, oh, well, yeah, that might be a good idea. So being very stubborn, I tried her approach and people started understanding. Then I built a WhatsApp chat for those attending the courses.
Mm-hmm.
And I could follow them through, because I noticed that the courses I gave with Johan, less than 10% understood. And of those, another 10% of those really did something. And then most of them did it wrong.
Yes.
So what was the use of so much effort? So I decided to give it very easy to understand. And I did it here in April. I got 22 people and they understood and they are doing it.
Yeah.
Most of them are doing it, like 80% of them instead of 10%. And then I gave a talk in Sicily that was better digested and people understood and they were very happy. Sadly, the power went off and they didn't tape it all. But I hope we tape the one in Arkansas, because now it's a very different, easier to understand.
Yeah. So you're monitoring yourself then, and your own performance, and which is always
my wife does that.
Yeah. And your very loving wife and family. So your goal with this program is to regenerate our ranches for maximum profitability by increasing biological capital, and you're looking at some of the things that we've talked about today: adaptive genetics, shorter and correct calving seasons, non-selective grazing, profitability, maximum protein, and minimum protein and minimum mineral supplementation. How to set up fences as well, fencing and soil life. One thing you haven't got there is about water. How do you manage water typically, Jimmy? Is that just as a question there? You said that the water was set up there. What sort of advice do you give about water supply for people generally?
Yeah, always do it bigger than necessary. If you require 2-inch pipe, go to 3. If you require 3, go to 4. If you require 4, go to 6. Why? Because there will always be problems. There will always be a day when it's so hot that you require more water, or you might grow your herd bigger than you thought.
Yep.
And I found a way to build homemade full flow bulbs for 3 inches or 4 inches. So it opens and flows the full bore.
Mm.
So I have my water points in my own ranch with shade because then algae doesn't grow,
Mhm.
made of concrete with these bulbs by gravity from the dams. And even a group of 300 cows cannot make the level go down.
Right.
And this is by gravity.
Yeah.
So that's the best way. Once they draw the level down and they start to get desperate, you're into trouble. Now, in a bigger herd, like let's say 3,000 animals, I prefer to use a pond,
Mm-hmm.
but not just any pond, a pond that you make in a rectangular way with electric fence on the shore,
Yeah.
and you fill it up before the herd gets there, and then you keep putting water in while they are there.
Yeah.
You need a lot of water trough space to feed 3,000 animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think different in bigger herds.
Yeah, sure. And I saw that the one that where our friend Sabando in
Yes.
in Chihuahua, he showed me some of that, and it was a very effective design where the fence, the electric fence, was just inside of the shore, and so the animals couldn't urinate or defecate the water. An animal's not going to back up to an electric fence if it knows it's electric.
I gave them the idea, yes. I consulted for them, and they went from 1,384 cows to 4,400 animals right now.
Yeah.
They're still going up.
Yeah, and their landscape changes, and I know it wasn't just with them. We had Luis came with his son Luis, and you looked at the
Luis Lopez.
yeah, we looked at the changes between when they were using holistic planned grazing, and then they shifted over to more of Johan and your methods, and the landscape changes. Well, the landscape changes from set stock, selective grazing over to holistic management was a big leap, but then seemed like it was an even bigger leap when it moved up to move through the system that you guys were talking about.
Yeah, that man is my hero. He's the champion of growing grass in Mexico.
Who's that? Luis
Robles and his family. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's a
They
great.
they string fences up in the mountain and go and move the cattle 4 times a day.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Hardworking people.
Oh, and very smart.
Yeah. It was a great time. It was very good for us to have both of them there, and we had a very special time at the end where the father and son got together. They because like a lot of fathers and sons, but they had a lot of fun. But it was great to see them, the emotion that they had together, and that coming together that's so important on farms, isn't it?
Yes, I was going to say a part of the biological capital is the continuing education.
Yeah.
They are not afraid to be challenged and learn new things. And they know all about mycorrhiza. And you can see the mycorrhiza in their farm, in the ranches, because when there is a drought, their grass is still green. And that's from mycorrhiza.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of people who've got some greetings here, Jimmy. One's Sergio Munez de Alba Medrano. He said hello. He's from Merida in the Yucatan. Merida. He says, I'm an aspiring regenerative cattle farmer, eager to learn. Congratulations to you all. And I've got also, this is Michael Rua Franco Keg. Greetings, colleagues from the land of Roma Sinuano and other tropical Creole races. We are regenerating ecosystems with Silvopastora Racional Según Vasan and or PRV, CPRV. Thanks for sharing your live video conversation. And I know that we had Daniel Suarez with us last year at the Rex in Mexico at Sierra Gorda. And Daniel does a lot of work on the Vasan method, which is really the origin of a lot of this work, isn't it? And can you speak a little bit to your experience with the Vasan method and what influence that's had for you?
Sure. I started with Andre Bazan's book, Grass Productivity, and then moved to Holistic Resource Management, the first book by Alan Savory with Sam Bingham,
Mm-hmm.
and then learned Management Intensive Grazing. But I still had more questions that those books and those people couldn't answer. And they had to do with the genetics, and they had to do with the economics. Because Andre Bazan developed his work at a time when it was profitable to make silage, to make hay. Now it's not. It's
Yeah.
raining again.
Yeah, it's okay.
And Andre Bazan was in a cooler environment with high octane grasses, low in fiber. And we are, well, in Mexico, my farm is in the lowland, sea level, very high heat index. So I had questions that they didn't answer. And with Johan, finally, I could understand the impact of all those different factors. And well, they say that we stand on the shoulders of great men, and that's true. So if it wasn't for Andre Bazan, Alan Saber, and all of those, Johan couldn't have achieved what he has, and I couldn't have achieved what I have.
Yeah.
So stand on the shoulders of great men before us.
Yeah, that's right.
We have to be grateful for them for having done their work. Now we have to do our part. So this keeps getting better each time and faster and easier.
And Daniel Suarez just said to us, that's right, genetics is the basic for grazing and being profitable.
Yeah, that's good. Now we want everyone to understand that. Daniel took our course in Chihuahua.
Yep.
And now he's very much into that, and he's getting better results each year. And he's a very enthusiastic person,
Yep.
which will help this movement get more momentum.
Yeah, he's doing a great job out of his farm or his ranch in Mexico, and we had the pleasure of spending time with Daniel at the same Rex that Sabando and Luis and a number of other people went to at Sierra Gorda. So one of the other questions I've got here is just as we come to our closing, Jimmy, numbers, recording the important traits, so that record keeping. Do you have methods for that, or do you recommend that people use the methods that are outlined in Johann Seitzman's book, Man, Cattle and Veldt? Do you think that they're good methods for that record keeping? Or is that something you're building up information about?
Those work very well, but some people may find it hard to digest.
Yes.
So as he often said, just look for the 8-in-5 package, an animal that weighs too much for its size. The shorter and heavier, the better. And let me put the charger because I'm running out of battery.
Oh, yep, no worries. I can hear you still.
Can you see me?
Yep, you're all good, mate. You're back with us. All good.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
So
what I do is how much does the animal weight per 100 centimeters height at the hip? I think that is easier to compare amongst mates, the same age animals, to select bulls. But for that, you need to read the Johann's book so you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his method is right on. It's just some people find it hard to understand.
Yeah, and that's part of the journey is, having new people come along and refine things. And as we say to people in any case, the best thing for you to do is understand what's going on and then make whatever tables or recording sheets that you want that works for you. As long as you do it, that's the most important thing.
Yes, correct.
Now, I've got a point here from my friend Julian Maul in South Australia. He says it's 20% genetics and 80% environment. Would you agree with that?
No. No. I thought I used to think that way, but now I met a guy, Eliseo, in Chihuahua, that he does non-selective grazing, violating the second law of Andreva's son. That means he leaves the cattle too long in the paddock till they finish everything. But he has great nutritional adaptation genetics after 20 years of selecting for that.
Yep.
So because he gives an 8-month rest period after that, because he gets an average of 18 inches of rainfall, he has achieved a higher stocking rate and a better plant species diversity by doing that. So I cannot say now that it's 90% management and 20% genetics. I think genetics plays a much higher percentage than we thought about before.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
A cow is not a cow. They're very different.
So another conversation here that we've got is, thank you, loving the conversation. This is from Alan Walker, and she's in Western Australia. Looking forward to sharing your work through the Jarrahdale Food and Farm Alliance in Western Australia. And I've said for years it would be, I know we've never organised this yet, Jimmy, but it would be great for you to come to Australia at some stage.
Yeah, we'll happen.
Yeah, it will happen. We'll make it happen at some stage. I'm talking with, I'm going up to Queensland in March and working with cattlemen up there. So I'll be putting forward, as I did last time, the suggestion that you should come out and work with people there. I think it's important, and it's really interesting when you look at, you would know this yourself in Mexico, when you're a prophet in your own land, sometimes that only goes so far. Sometimes you need an injection of an outsider to come in and help. And I think you've probably injected a bit of that into the United States and other places that you've gone. And also Italy. I know when you went to Italy, a lot of people, as you said before, I've got really good feedback from that time there. I've got another question here from Ulrico. Ulrico Viana Neto. Now, Ulrico lives in Australia, but he comes from Brazil. And he asked the question, is Jaime aware of any projects in Brazil? Vassan's method is gathering momentum there, but is still incipient. Holistic management is even rarer, mainly because of the language barrier and the paradigm shift it requires, I suppose. Do you know much about Brazil, or have you worked down there yourself?
No, I haven't. I would love to go there, and I speak fluent Spanish. No Portuguese, but I understand it. I can read it. But Spanish, if they speak Spanish, I can give it. It's my mother's, not my mother's, but it's what I learned from a child.
Yeah. So
my mother's tongue is the United States.
Yeah, right. So your work, or people in Brazil as well. A lot of ranchers in Brazil would speak English in any case. So I'm sure you'd be able to manage. But it would be great to. But in terms of projects, are you aware of much going on down there?
No, it's mostly very huge acreage, or how they say, broad acre projects where they don't do much of grazing program.
Yeah.
Like in Australia, it's the same in the bigger stations. So there, what we could do is the genetics and the breeding season, and eventually get them to do something about improving the land, which will yield them even more, but they're not conscious of it.
Yeah. So I've got a question. I know a few people in Brazil, if I could say, just Ulrico. Alina is down there, and I can put some of these notes to here after we finish this session. I'll put some suggested people down there that I know of in Brazil who are doing some really good work. in the holistic management space. I'm not aware of Vasan. Perhaps Daniel Suarez would have a better idea of that because he's so involved in the Vasan method and would probably know some people down there who are working with Vasan's method. Aldo Diaz Gomez has a question. Choosing a bull just with eyes, it's more complicated than choosing it with the lineaments. I want the ability that Johan has, and I think that you have too, Jimmy, to know a bull just by having one look.
That Aldo Diaz from Chihuahua?
It may be. I don't know where Aldo is from, but
He's the brother of Servando.
Right. Very good. Right.
He's an expert on designing water systems and fences.
Yes, good.
Okay,
I should talk to him sometime.
Yes, he's good. When you go into a corral and you see a group of bulls, the one that first catches your attention and your attention gravitates towards that animal, that's usually the best animal. Once you learn what to look for. Masculinity, massive shoulders, 18-5 package, and then you start to look at the smaller defects or things or aspects.
But that's a really good point you make, though, Jimmy, is that, you have to know what to look for. And I think that's the real question here. And Johan Seitzman says that it's not a beauty contest.
You know the best at the man or the women to look for a good bull?
Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, a woman is much better at this than a man. It's easier for them to identify the best bull, the most masculine bull, than a man.
Well, why is that?
They look for the same: broad shoulders, narrow hips, wide thighs. Look masculine. So I've seen with Johan, we have been asked women to identify the best bull, and they are the best.
So always take your wife along with you is what you're saying.
Or show her the pictures.
Yeah.
But eventually you get good at it and you don't need that. But they are so good, really. They are.
Yeah. Well, I've heard that spoken of a few times now. And I think it was Gerald Fry, who is a guy in the United States, who says that when describing this same body shape description, saying that, it's just the same in humans. That the features that are in humans are very similar. Those masculine features in humans are very similar to what we're looking for in livestock as well. So that's that. There's been a bit of a reversal of that, though, hasn't there? So what we've got is livestock, males that are starting to look more like females, and females that are starting to look like males, and that change in body form has an effect on fertility, surely.
Yes, and it's a side effect of selecting for the wrong criteria.
Yeah.
Like EPDs. When they start selecting for EPDs, what they will end up with is an animal.
Can you just, what was that? EPDs? What's that?
EPDs, it's expected progeny difference. That means selecting the animal that weighs the most at weaning or at 1 year of age, instead of having him compete against itself, it has to compete with other animals. And that's not fair because they start with different frame size or height, and they select the one that gained the most.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're going to end up with the most hormone imbalanced animal as the best, and he will look like a steer.
Mm-hmm.
When you have bulls that look like steers, you ruin the breed. And when you have cows that look like steers or like bulls, she's infertile.
Yeah.
So the first thing we have to consider is that a cow should look very feminine, like a Jersey cow, even if she's beef type, and a bull should look very masculine. Very masculine. If we don't, and that's called sexual dimorphism.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose that, we end up with a subfertile herd. And that doesn't make money and doesn't regenerate the soil.
No. So my friend Julian Barossa Angus, he says, my wife calls it cow porn.
True.
It's probably a good, the best type of porn. So just on the last thing here, I've got a point on selection for profits per hectare, not production per animal, which you've just touched on, which ends like, which you point out, ends up pushing on a string.
Yeah, because when you select for the highest gain or highest animal performance instead of the highest profits per unit of land, it's like pushing on a string. Because then you need continuous grazing or selective grazing. You need the crutches to have higher and higher production per animal. It's like if you had 1 hectare of corn and your goal was to sell the biggest ear of corn. Your selection and management criteria will be very different than if you wanted to produce the highest amount of grain per hectare.
Yes.
Johan explained this. He said if you put a plant every 3 meters and you heavily fertilize and use insecticide, you will get the biggest ears, but very low yield per hectare. But if you plant them closer together and be very judicious in your use of fertilizer and herbicide or insecticide, that means less, you will get a much higher profit per hectare. The same with livestock. If you want a high production per animal, you pamper that animal, and you have a big animal that is hormone imbalance and nutritionally challenged. But if you want a higher profit, you have many more animals that can heal the land with their hooves and mouths and produce more pounds of weaned calves per hectare than the other type.
Or milk.
Of course, or lambs or whatever.
So last point here, just before we close up, Jimmy, is how do you, this is from Shane Blakely, how do you select your most fertile cows?
Shane Blakely? He's in my group, my WhatsApp group.
Oh, good.
Hello, Shane. How do you select the most fertile cow? It's very easy. You do a chart or a graph of the year, and you put your cows there, and the ones that are able to produce their first calf at 2 years of age, and then every year after that, the ones that have the shorter intercalving period, and at the same time give a fair amount of milk. That means that they win from 45 to 55% of the body weight in calves. That will be the most fertile cow. You do it because if you don't have a breeding season and one calves in the winter, you cannot compare that to one that came in late spring.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I've just got thanks from David Ward. David's an old friend of mine, and he does holistic management work and agronomy work across Australia. And so thank you to David for saying this is a great discussion. So that was my hope, and thank you to you, Jimmy, for making that possible. And one last point from Michael Rua Franco, saying that for Orico, that in Brazil you have the PRV core in the UFCS or SC and the Andre Vasson Institute in Porto Alegre. So I'll let him read that. Those comments are there. Any final points that you'd like to make, Jimmy, that I haven't covered so far or that we haven't covered?
Well, this knowledge needs to be spread, and more land needs to be regenerated, because it starts with one ranch or farm, then others comes to visit, and then they start to copy it and adapt it to their own specific conditions. No two farms are the same. The environment differs, and the most important environment is the one between the ears of the owner. That's a phrase
Absolutely. The climate of the mind.
Hey, that's so important.
Yeah. Well, thank you, mate. It's Aldo's just said, Jaime, in my opinion, it's more important to arrive to a bad year with adapted cattle than with good graze.
Correct.
Yeah. I think he might have been listening to you somehow. All right. Well, with that, I wanted to thank you very much, and thank you. We've had quite a number of people come on today. I think it's been about 40 or so, which is great. So I wanted to thank you, Jimmy, for giving up your time today, and I look forward to giving your arm a rest. And but no, thank you so much for all of your leadership and inspiration. You've always been someone who, since I've met you, I've looked up to you enormously, and I've learned an enormous amount from you. So I wanted to thank you publicly for that. And also today for giving up your time and sharing so many of your insights and knowledge, which is huge, with people. And I think that one of the reasons why you do such a great job is because you're a producer yourself. So you're able to talk to people at that level and back it up with your own experience and results. So well done, sir. And I hope that people can get onto your You primarily have people talk to you through your Facebook site, which is Regen Graze, and but you have the workshop coming up in March, early March in Arkansas. Have you got any other workshops coming up?
Not planned right now. Thank you very much. I have learned also a lot from you, and we have to learn from each other all in our group.
Yeah, and this is a great sort of space for doing that. So I really appreciate you giving up your time today, mate. And thanks to everyone for who are all thanking us now for joining us. And this has been recorded, so you'll be able to watch it later. Or for those of you who haven't seen it, then you'll be able to watch it at another time. All right, thank you very much, Jimmy, and all the best to your family and to all the people and landscapes that you're working with. And do have a great 2018, my friend. Thank you so much.
You. Have a great day. Bye.
Yeah, you too, mate. Thank you. Hooroo.
Bye.